All right, so today on the Good Fruit Show, I have back with me again Mr. Elliot Hulse. In previous episodes, we actually talked about Elliot's life story, and if you haven't seen those, I highly recommend going and checking those out. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to his story, and I think you would too. After those two episodes, Elliot had mentioned wanting to discuss raising a family, and in a solo episode on my channel recently, I talked about the American identity crisis that we are going through. And some of the components that we explore in that is that America is largely a Christian, capitalistic, and constitutional republic based country that follows a lot of democratic procedures. Now, with the vast spread of socialist, Marxist, and atheistic ideas across our country, it has come with a lot of instability, chaos, and even mass violence. It has also led to a lot of confusion about our national identity and personal identities. So, from what I've learned about Elliot in our previous episodes together, he is a man who, like all of us, has experienced episodes of instability and chaos himself. However, he is determined, persistent, gritty, and does not give up. He is a man who chases after what he wants in life and aims to prop up his community in the process. Elliot is a man of God, country, and family, whether he would describe it that way or not. I think that that's very accurate. And notably, he is also a man who pursues individual excellence. Taking ownership, accountability, and responsibility are not foreign concepts to Elliot. And in the land of the free and home of the brave, these values, virtues, and character traits are largely what makes our country great. Preserving them by passing them along to our children and the future of our nation is how we can keep it that way. And that's why we'll be talking about raising a family with Mr. Hulse. Now, Elliot has years of experience in this that I simply do not have, so I'm going to approach this conversation with respect and let him do most of the talking and me most of the asking and listening. Elliot, how you doing, man?
Well, CJ, thanks for having me back, buddy.
Of course, pleasure. So, just kind of a fun starter question. I'm sure you're aware of all the civil unrest that we're seeing in our country right now with Charlie Kirk and the mass violence across the country. Do you think part of the reason that we're seeing so much civil unrest is because we have a lot of people with too much time on their hands?
No, I don't think so. Um, Contrary to what many of you believe, we had a lot more time in our hands in years past. I mean, the 40-hour work week is sort of a new invention. I remember seeing videos about medieval Europe and how the so-called serfs really only worked a few hours a day, and they had long stints and periods and seasons where they didn't work. I also remember learning about hunter-gatherer societies and where they would work in sprints. They would, get up early in the morning and lollygag around. When it was in the heat of the day, they would stay under trees. And then it was in the evening that they would do their hunting. I mean, they had a lot, I think societies before us had way more time than we had. We're caught up in so much that it almost seems like we're never resting. We're always on. I remember growing up without the internet. I remember growing up without cell phones. And I remember when I got my first cell phone, had already been on YouTube. I had already been an internet entrepreneur. And I remember when work was confined to my laptop. Laptop was closed, well, work was done. Laptop's open, and then I can work again. But when the cell phone came about, it was like, nope. Emails are going off and messages are going off. I can check things, I can do things. And it's like now work is in my pocket. We don't have more time, but we have more bad ideas being pumped into our brains. Back then, when they had all that time, first of all, most people couldn't read. Second of all, so they weren't distracted by a whole bunch of stuff. They spent most of their time with the people in their tribe. they were, whatever information they got was usually either designed to help them survive or to enhance their spiritual life. I mean, it was very limited information that they were getting. I think the difference is not the amount of time in our hands. I think it's the amount of information that we have. And it confuses. We're confused. We're disjointed. We're ungrounded. We're dissociated from ourselves. That's the big difference.
I think that ties directly into raising a family. Like, while this wasn't like directly on um, the thread of that, what are some of the bad ideas that you see kind of spreading across our country that you think are sort of having this large impact and being kind of a negative consequence to our American culture?
Well, one bad idea is outsourcing the education of our children to the federal government. That's a bad idea. We've never ever done that before. Never in the history of mankind did parents rush to get their children out of their homes 8 to 10 hours a day, being educated by who knows who about who knows what. That's a bad idea. And it goes back even further than that. I was watching a video the other day about how inhumane we treat our infants. So it's a bad idea to treat pregnancy and childbirth like it's a medical condition. And they put you in, they won't even do this to dogs. They won't even do this to animals, cattle, and like farm animals. The woman has her baby in this sterile, sort of foreign, alien place that's for sick people and disease and the wounded. And as soon as the baby comes out, they rip the baby. If they don't allow the baby to come out naturally, which is such a rare thing these days, like actually through her body, they rush to cut the belly open, pull the baby out, chop him off, and send him off to some room where there's an incubator and they're sticking the baby with shots. The very first physical experience the baby gets is a slap on his ass. Then if you're a boy, they cut off a part of your dick. And then they give you back to your mother. And then your mother doesn't hold you and feed you like a dog would feed their baby. No. Your mother sticks a rubber nipple in your mouth and gives you powdered formula. Like, these are all bad ideas. And I'm not even talking about the advent of communication technology. I'm just talking about the bad ideas that cause us to do things that allow us to be disjointed from our own nature.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Not only that, they get a slap on the butt and, kind of go through this really traumatic experience right as soon as they're exposed to the world, but they're also getting injected with dozens of vaccines in some cases.
Yeah, these are bad ideas that somehow we just adopted. We just chose. We just said okay to. And it's all brand new stuff. Like, we take it for granted, like that's just the way it is. Like, it's only been the past 100 years or so. Like, all these vaccines, they only came out about 100 years ago. What do we do? What do we do all these thousands of years? Treating pregnancy and childbearing like it's a medical disease? What did women do for thousands of years? Our Lord was born in a manger, and they say in a cave somewhere. What do we do? What do we do before all this magical mess? So I think it begins there. It's our disjointedness from nature, God, and ourselves that it all begins. Because I think when we're disjointed in that way, when we're dissociated that way, when we're traumatized, it's really what it is. When you try, and when they study the way that victims treat or aggressors treat their victims, they understand that by traumatizing your victim, they're much more easily manipulated. The more you traumatize them, the more there's almost like a bond. There's a trauma bond that forms. So by traumatizing your victim, they actually draw closer to you and wait for you. It's almost like with dogs. like to get dogs to actually, well, at least the way I was train my dog. My dog is a really tough kind of dog, Belgian Malinois. You don't train them by being nice. You train them by being tough with them. And then when they respect you enough, they're like, okay, all right, what do you want? He looks at me every time he wants something now. But I had to like break him to get him to be that way. Well, I mean, that technology is used on us. We're broken from the time we come into come into the world. And as a result, this trauma causes us to just latch on to what our traumatizers say and dictate. it's pretty crazy.
Really interesting you say that, man. Recently on the Sean Ryan show, it was an older episode, but I watched his episode with Victor Marx. And if you've never heard of this guy, he's very interesting. He had a very traumatic childhood. And when he was really young, he recalled being a part of an experiment where he was forced to cut the head off of a cat. And the reason that the psychologists or scientists were doing this to him was because they wanted to create a split in his personality and in his identity. And you were talking about how trauma can essentially create this dissociation with oneself and with our natural way of being human. And it's just what you can do with trauma is astounding. And you kind of create this compartmentalization of a person. You create this fracturing of the self, which is also something you had talked about in our Life Story podcast together. So, what do you think extreme trauma can do to our identity? Like, put yourself in Victor Marx's shoes of having to cut the head off of a cat as a very small child and not wanting to do that, not being so perverted and kind of unhealthy mentally. Like, what do you think this extreme trauma is causing in our country and with our families and with our children even?
Well, it goes back to your opening question, right? You asked about like why is there so much violence? Why is there so much decay and degeneracy and bad things happening in our society? And you were asking about having a lot of time on our hands, but this is what the trauma produces. Even the TV programs, the movies that we watch, they're traumatizing. To watch people get blown up, or even just to see someone's head get cut off, or just to watch violence, because when you're sitting in the television, sitting in the living room watching the television, you're in a passive state. You're almost being hypnotized, and so it like touches not just your cognitive senses, but your intuition. Like it touches your heart, like it penetrates you. You're being programmed when you watch that stuff, and it traumatized. The nervous system is being manipulated as a result. And so sitting through movies that are violent, playing violent video games, the trauma of experiencing childbirth in our society, school is trauma. Like I remember I was definitely traumatized by school, 100%. Now I'm not like complaining, like somebody beat me, but it was definitely traumatizing to be separated in that way and to be subject to these strangers. It was just strange. And so with that, you just mentioned, you said it so well. There's this dissociation, there's this split that happens. And that's what allows one to like, you ever hear someone say, I was beside myself, right? Like, where there was a split. Now I'm beside myself. There I am, but here I am over here. They become beside themselves, and then they can commit all kinds of strange, inhumane actions against other people. We could go as far down the rabbit hole as like, well, okay, that's like sort of a mass programming, but depends on how conspiratorial you want to get, right? Conspiratorial. I don't know how to say that word.
Conspiratorial?
There you go. Conspiratorial you want to get. but they're like these CIA projects where like they know how to brainwash and control people, like hypnotize you and turn you into like an automaton. And so I know that I don't know. I believe that there are those who have been like traumatized and groomed. They even said it like in Hollywood, they traumatized and groomed. This is what like the whole Diddy parties are all about, and Epstein Island is all about, and depends on how much of an Alex Jones I want to be today. But Bohemian Grove and what they do and these rituals and stuff, right? Like it's all about trauma and control. They traumatize you and they control you, and now you become like a mental slave.
Well, even if you look at it like fundamentally, like you're talking about Diddy, the likes of Epstein. Like if you look at the fundamental premise of that, of getting someone to do something that they would never normally do, whether it be through the use of drugs or just on their own accord, and then recording that and using it as blackmail against that person, you hold like something very deep about that person that they do not, for the life of them, want the public to be exposed to, because it would crush their identity, it would crush their image and their reputation. And so blackmail as like a fundamental concept is very powerful, and you can easily control and manipulate people if you have something like that, and if you have that much power over someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So to kind of get, this is all pretty relevant. This is things that our children are going to have to deal with in today's world. Have you seen the new AI videos with Sora and how powerful these tools are getting?
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah, I did see some videos about Sora.
Have you thought much about the potential and the capability of that, in the near future?
Here's what I think about the fact that we're getting this stuff now means that it's got to be at least 50 years old. So I wonder how much of the things we take for granted actually happened, or were they AI holograms? Alex Jones used to talk about holograms. He was like, it didn't really, he used to talk about like Sandy Hook, right? I'm not saying he was right or wrong, but he was like, they have holograms and then they create these people, and what you're seeing is like not an actual person. And it's like, when he was saying all that stuff, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's why everybody thinks he's crazy. But the old mantra, I guess Alex Jones was right. So when you look at these like videos on Sora, just understand now we're getting it for our own entertainment and bastardization. So whatever we decide to do with it, but how much of what we took for granted over the past 30, 40 years was just made up? That's what I think about.
Seriously. As much as people want to talk about Alex Jones and kind of slander him, the man predicted 9/11. Like, in detail, a couple of days before 9/11 happened. He talked about what was going to happen. He tried to warn the government about what was going to happen. And it's just kind of being brushed off. He's also got the frogs are gay thing, and, that's turning out to be accurate and
Yeah.
actually well thought out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but also on the topic of AI, like, have you thought much about, they can take a video of you and have you doing whatever they program it to do. So they can have like a picture, like a video of you performing a crime, robbing a bank, killing someone, so on and so forth. And we're getting to a point in our country where it's just like, well, what is really real, and how are we going to distinguish between what is real and what is fake?
Yeah. I think it's going to compel us. I don't even know if we need to do this, and I'm getting a little crazy, but I think it's going to ignite a spiritual evolution, a rapid spiritual evolution, where because everything is so fake, we'll be forced to rely on our sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth senses. We'll have to become far more sensitive. And people are already doing it, right? Like if you would have shown someone an AI video 10 years ago and the finger was a little glitchy, you know how you can just figure it out now? The finger, no one would have seen it. No one would have seen it. Because they had no concept that this could possibly be fake. But now we're a lot more sensitive, and you just know an AI video is just a little bit off. Like you can just sense it. What is that? That's a sensitivity arising within us that is now being called to the surface. 10 years ago, no one would even be looking for that. You would have seen the same exact thing, but would have just totally brushed it off. You didn't see it. It's just illusion. We only see what we want to see. Now we're sort of primed to see it. Do you ever read, like everything I read now, or even like YouTube videos I watch, I know it's an AI prompt. Like I know it's just by the way it's speaking, the way, not just the words being vocally spoken, but the way the words are put together. I'm like, oh, that's AI. And I am not mad, but I'm like, I know ChatGPT made that script. 10 years ago, you would have said that to somebody and would be like, what are you talking about? What is that? Once again, that's a sort of sensitivity that we're starting to adopt, to differentiate, to discern what is real and what is fake. And the more fake we're surrounded with, the more we'll evolve. I think it's going to spark, like I said, it's going to spark an intuitive revolution in us.
I completely agree, man. In a recent video I did on the American identity crisis, that was actually my conclusion, is like with the more fakeness that is arising in our culture, it's calling us to get a deeper sense of realness with each other, and specifically I use the word intimacy. So the more fakeness that we're being surrounded by, I think that the more intimate we're going to have to become with one another so that we can truly know one another. And part of that is that with technology, it kind of expands our capability to do that. It kind of expands the potential for using this technology in order to create a deeper sense of relationship amongst one another. I mean, I've been using AI for a lot of, or like ChatGPT for a lot of, like the life story format that we followed. I've been using technology to kind of help me develop that out and create relationship frameworks, conversational frameworks, in order to create a deeper sense of relationship and intimacy with other people. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I'd go even a little bit further in that your original question about having more time on our hands being a negative thing. Obviously, we're going to continue to have more time on our hands as AI takes over, 60% of the jobs. It's doing all the things that we needed to do or hire someone to do. Now we will have more time on our hands, and I think we're going to either have to do one of two things. We will become so bored that we revert into our most primal nature. This is why they're like pushing for marijuana to be legalized everywhere. They want the sex apps and pornography and sexual degeneracy. Like there's a big push towards that because we have a lot of time on our hands. So what else are we going to do? But then there's going to be a split between those that take that bait, but it'll eventually, they'll get tired of it. So I think at some point we'll all ascend. It's going to accelerate our ascension. The extra time in our hands is going to cause us to do what? Meditate more, contemplate more, pray more deeply, become more intuitive. That will be the next, how do they call it? Like self-development. The next form of self-development will be how to, it's not even going to be a how-to. Like the way we're thinking right now will be so foreign. No one will need to learn how to do anything. I think we will just, I don't even want to use the word learn. We will just allow ourselves to be. And in that being, we're going to blossom.
That's fascinating. I mean, in the Bible, it talks about the story of the Tower of Babel. And, I've thought about that quite a bit, just in terms of, relating it to where we're at in our culture with the advancement of technology. And part of that story was that everyone was speaking the same language. And kind of on the thread that you were on, they like reached this level of ascension. And, I might say like this level of competency and skillfulness. It's almost like they became too smart for their own good, too competent for their own good, too skillful for their own good. And the kind of conclusion of that story is that God strikes down the Tower of Babel, and then he spreads the people back out all across the country. And so, or all across the world. And so I'm wondering if this is a Tower of Babel moment where maybe we can reach a new and different conclusion, or is history just going to repeat itself?
Both. So think of the towers being built this way, right? And when you hear collapse, what do you immediately think? Back down. But as things consolidate, they fracture, and I think we go up. I'm thinking of this as you're saying this. It's almost like quantum evolution. So like there is, I can't remember the scientific term, but then there's a consolidation, and then there's entropy, and then there's a split, like cell division, right? Remember like mitosis, cell division, where like it comes together, right? The towers like we're coming together. It all comes together, but then chaos happens within the organism. So it creates a chaos, and what does chaos then do? It then creates a split, and that's how cells split, right? So in a way, and this is just me making this up as you were talking, thinking of this, like we consolidated. There was a consolidation, and then there was a split. And I think the split that we're going to experience is not going to create, the chaos happens before the split. I think the split will create a new order. I think we'll move into a higher order, and I think that the term split is not so much like we'll be individually fractured and crazy. I think we'll experience that before this quantum leap happens. But the quantum leap, I think, is going to be from consolidated world power. New world order, all these NGOs, even the centralization of the American government, which is not constitutional. We were actually supposed to be separate states. I think what's going to happen is because of everything that's being exposed and everything that's happening, and the play of their hand so hard, that we're going to come together, and the technology is going to be a part of why the whole thing breaks up. But then we become more individually sovereign. We become more individually sovereign beings. And so the split will be a good thing. It won't be a crumbling this way. It'll be a crumbling this way. And I don't even think I could call it crumbling. It's a quantum leap into, I would say, a stronger, unified individualism, if that even makes sense.
Stronger, unified individualism.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting you say that, because I think largely America was kind of founded on this idea of individualism. And do you see that even working its way into Christianity? I think that you see that largely with Protestantism, because largely what Protestantism is it's based on sola scriptura, which means that the Bible is the highest authority. But really what that's saying is that my interpretation of the Bible is the highest authority. And so just to kind of branch that off into a Christianity-based topic.
Yeah.
And that's completely disregard 2,000 years of history of popes and apostolic fathers, praying with the Holy Spirit, moving with the Holy Spirit, all the miracles, the Eucharistic miracles, the apparitions of Mary.
Hmm.
Um, let's just disregard all of that rich history, and let's determine what the Bible really means for us, and let's move in the direction of sola scriptura. But
This is going to sound contrarian, and this is I'm just doing mental exercise right now, but like it's inevitable. Like look at the church. The church consolidated power, and then what happened? There was chaos and fracture. Now we got what 40,000 different denominations, and with every quantum leap, there's going to be just because we live in a fallen world, there'll be the good parts of it and there'll be the bad parts of it. So I think there's just the fact that the church itself fractured that way is evidence that I think it's a form of the Tower of Babel. And I love the church. I love being Catholic. But the church also has its dark side. It has worldliness and power hunger. Its integration with worldly authorities. I think it just started getting too powerful. And using the word in a non pious way, but dogmatic, not in a good way. I don't know for sure, but this is just where my brain is going right now. And so it needed to be broken so that something could be unleashed. And what was unleashed when the church was broken, it actually happened as a result of and then perpetuated the printing of more Bibles. And it's the printing of the Bibles that led us into the literary age. And so now the fact that the church fractured, broke, split up means like you can have a Bible. And we've gotten to the point now where it's like, I just saw a meme that said that since 2019, there have been something like a 61% increase in download Bible apps. And since 2020, there's been something like a 54% increase in people buying Bibles. Like all of a sudden, having the Bible in your hand is like just normal. But before, which I think it had to be that way because not everybody knew how to read, the church consolidated all knowledge, and I appreciate this. See, I'm sort of in between here. I'm not taking sides, but I like boundaries and I like flow. And I think that's what God teaches us. There's a dance between boundaries and flow. And how the church has to give it stamp, like what do they call it? When you open the book and it has the imprimatur. If the church doesn't give the imprimatur to something, then it's just, well, most people don't take that. They don't really care anymore, but there was a time that would meant that any book that doesn't get the church's stamp is heretical. It's a heretical book. Don't read it. Well, I'm looking at a bookshelf right now that has hundreds of books that don't have a imprimatur on it. What does that mean? That means the church's power was, it did this. Where the church was the only one that had a book. Now everybody has books. There are books all over the place. It exploded up. So the church had to have this split.
so, you're talking about the growth and power in which the church has reached kind of this pinnacle point. And Elliot, if you think about it, like how many people were there at the beginning of the church? How many people started the church?
Yeah, 12, right?
So it's gone from like 12 to millions, potentially even millions of people being aware of Christianity. And so I think you're totally right that there's going to be this natural fractionation of biblical principle, biblical teaching, of Christianity, and that just sort of being a natural process working its way out.
Christianity is spreading. Like the efforts of the church was strong. Like, they went out and evangelized the world. That's what the church did. And I'm saying this just like I said, mental exercise. Don't take anything I say here and say Elliot Hall said. But like the Protestant Revolution, in a way, helped spread Christianity even further. In a way, it took the book and left the church. But now there's so many people that just consider themselves Christians that have no affiliation whatsoever. that's accessible to them. I try, like when I evangelize, which I don't even know if you can call it that, I just tell friends why they should be Catholic and how cool it is. The problem then becomes, you got to wait until November when they start RCIA, and then you can go into RCIA, and now you got to wait another 6 months until Easter, and then you can be baptized. Meanwhile, like Protestants are out there dunking people in school in pools, baptizing left and right. It unleashed the power of baptism. Oh, what do you mean only baptism once a year during Easter? It's beautiful. I love the ritual. I think it's awesome. I like the rigor, but at the same time, it's like, Billy Bob Baptist over in his backyard barn church is baptizing people every day. Jesus Christ, Lord, and it's a valid baptism. It crumbled up, but with every split has its negativity though. Like, so I do agree. Like, you lose something of the coherence, which is the dark side of it.
Yeah, and for people who don't know Catholicism, Catholic it actually means universal. And so what Elliot is talking about with that cohesion is that if you are a member of the Catholic Church, and like if you go to a Catholic Mass in Nigeria, it's going to be pretty much the same thing as what you experience in your hometown. And so there's that cohesion and that universality of the Catholic Church. Whereas with the Protestant Church, and I'm not sure, I've never been to a Protestant Mass, but I would assume that would not be the case. There isn't that cohesion within the Protestant Church.
Yeah, they don't have Mass, they have services. And it's interesting because right now, it's so crazy how God works. As the world is reaching its most fractured, what is happening, especially amongst Gen Z? They're all gravitating towards tradition. The church has seen the greatest movement towards it just in these past 5 years since the pandemic than it's seen in like 100 years. There's a huge influx of particularly young people, and particularly towards the Latin Mass. They want reverence, they want tradition, they want history. They're like, where are we? And what happens when there's too much fracture? There's another consolidation. Only now it's like pulling in even more. So there had to be a fracture so there can be a consolidation. And I almost think like, I keep like removing the power from us when I say certain things, like we're going to choose to do things. I don't think we're choosing to do things. I think this is God's plan. God knows that like there needs to be you got to break eggs to make an omelet. I think he knew that there needed to be this fracture within the church so that ultimately he could, like a virus, spread out and then magnetize people back in. And then it'll be like another golden age of the church.
Yeah, I hope so.
Until it does that again. Until it does this again. And it keeps doing this. I mean, that is the nature of life. Nature of the world that we live in is consolidation, explosion. Like everything is just doing this. Even every breath we take, it's an inhalation and like we take it in, we consolidate air, it fills our body, fills our lungs, and we spit it out, and it goes like everywhere.
Yeah. It's always bouncing between like a state of flux and then influx. But I think that's a good point to kind of transition now. Because we've laid a lot of the groundwork for where we're at culturally, with the advancement of technology, also, with topics about the Catholic and Christian faith and how that's progressing and how that's moving. But to transition here into a new topic, finding a good spouse, which is kind of a big shift from where we were at. But if we bring it back down to, our everyday life, like men are looking for a good spouse. So in your opinion, and especially now, I think that men are getting increasingly more picky about their spouse because we're taking in so much information and we have so many options to the point where, maybe we can be a little bit more picky. But
yeah.
In your opinion, do you think men should be quote unquote ready before choosing a partner?
I didn't know you were going to go there with the question, but when you say quote unquote ready, that's very that's a broad term. I think men in general are being readied. I think your generation, I think this generation coming up where it's so difficult, it seems. I think this is the generation that has to suffer the pain for the product of what your children will experience, what my children are hopefully starting to experience. But men lead in the sexual marketplace when things are rightly ordered. But when things are backwards and perverted as they've been since the garden, but it's gotten into such it has really accelerated since the 1960s and the sexual revolution and the advent of the pill and contraception and all these things. Women then became the prize. But before sex was unleashed and made freely available with zero consequences, men were the prize. Because the man decides who he's going to marry. Woman decides who gets sex. So when you make sex free and cheap, then men will follow women. And what men are now, when they're being picky, I think it's a good thing. What they're doing, in a lot of instances, men, I know because a lot of young men come to me, they don't want these women who've been run through. They don't want a woman that has had lots of sex. So because that's what men are now leaning towards, men are taking back their power and they're saying no, as long as they're not jerking off the porn, which is another way to leak their power. But if they're really cultivating their sexual energy and building their masculinity and not perverting a generation of women, what will end up happening is women will become more virtuous because that's what men want. Women will become whatever we want. And if we're complaining that women are loose and women are masculine and women are, all the challenges we have with women, we have to ask ourselves, how did we lead them to be that way? Now, of course, we were tempted, but we bit the apple. We took it. And as a result, now we have a generation of women that are, I don't know how else to say it, but like just loose. They're used up, and that's the way the guys will say it. They're like, I don't want these women who've been around the block. Well, guess who was taking them on a ride around the block? You and your buddies. You're the generation before you. Like, that's what has been happening. You've been abusing these women. That's basically what we do. When we seek out sex for a woman that we don't intend to make our wife, we're using and abusing her, and she's doing the same thing to us. So it becomes an abusive relationship. Sexual fornication is abuse. You're abusing one another. When we stop, and we can only abuse women we only abuse women because women are asking to be abused, and women abuse us because we want them to abuse us. Like, abuse me, like kill me, take my life force, right? And so both are confused. It's when we have this level of evolution that we're experiencing. We're literally in it. That's why the church is growing so much. This awakening is forcing us painfully, but also causing us to aspire to a higher sexual responsibility. And so the fact that Gen Z is not having as much sex, well, a lot of it has to do with pornography. And a lot of it has to do with the bad intersexual dynamics. But it's also going to force both genders to rethink how they're doing this thing. Why haven't marriages worked for the past 3 generations? They're going to look, and they're going to hear guys like me talking in these conversations. They're going to realize, they were doing relationships wrong. That's why marriages don't work. Men want to blame women, and women blame men. But it's a dance. You're both doing it. Adam can't blame Eve because he took it, and Eve can't blame Adam because he didn't protect her. It's both of us. So we're both having women are complaining now because they're like, why don't men talk to us anymore? There were these videos going viral. This one woman is like, oh, it's so difficult out there now. Men don't even want to talk to us. It's like, yeah, you asked for that. And men at the same time, they're like, oh, these women are terrible. And it's like, yeah, you asked for that. Now they're doing this. And I think it's a good thing. It's unfortunate, but we have to reach the bottom before we can bounce back up to the top. And there are consequences as a result, but it's forcing us to be sovereign and really pay attention to what it is that we're doing and cultivating our own sense of self-worth and spiritual value so that we can actually come back together in a way that is resourceful, a way that is ordered. And God gives us the blueprint for that. God gives us these boundaries, like sex within marriage, to protect us. He's not trying to be a bad guy. He's like, I don't want you guys to have any fun, so you better not be out there having sex unless you marry that girl. It sounds like, oh, you're so tough. It's like, no, wait a second. Like, do you see how bad things are? You've been out there boning, and you guys are all doing this. It's like, it sucks, doesn't it? It sucks. Good. Now, will you listen to me? Stop fornicating and court one another and pay attention. Talk to these women. Pay attention to them. See if she has virtue and value beyond her vagina. And then, oh, I think I want to make this my wife. And then you make a bunch of babies and you teach them how to do it right too. And that's where we're going.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually at this Catholic event recently, and someone asked or made a really interesting point about the Adam and Eve story, because Eve, often catches a lot of flack. And this person said, well, where was Adam while Eve was consulting with the serpent? Like, where was Adam to chop the head off of the snake and to protect his wife? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for another follow-up question that I have for you is, for our young men and young boys out there, like, you had mentioned that men lead in the sexual economy, basically. And I think a lot of young men kind of know that intuitively, but why do you think that is? Is it just biologically based because we're larger on average and we're more physically capable on average? You think it's biologically based, spiritually based? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, just the nature of masculinity is to pursue. The masculine energy, I'm not even just talking about a man, masculine energy moves out. That's what it does. That's why just all you got to do is look at our genitals. What does the masculine genital do? It moves out. It rises up and it moves out. What does the feminine genital do? It softens and it receives. It takes in. So the man is the one that pursues the woman. Now that sounds old-fashioned. You got all these women now who are out there, pursuing men. But the natural order of things is very rooted in our biology. And so the man is the one that proposes. He goes and says, hey, I'd like to court you. I'd like to go a little further with you. The woman gets to deny or receive. So she is not powerless. She gets to say yes or no. But it's up to the man to choose. He's the one that chooses. He's the one and so that is initiating the whole process. So it's not like a culturally made up thing. It's deep rooted in our biology. Even you gotta look at dogs. Just look at dogs. It's just so plain and evident in our, I say, fallen world, because we're in the third dimension and we abide by these laws of physicality. Like a masculine dog, he's sniffing around, he's looking, he's like, where is that? I know that's around here somewhere. And the female dog, what do they say? She flags. What does that mean? She turns around and flags her tail. It's like, hey, here I am. So it's rooted in our nature.
It's the same thing with, it's hunting season right now, and it's the same thing with white-tailed deer. I don't know if you're familiar with hunting or not, but there's this part of the season where it's called the rut, and the bucks are out pursuing the does. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny to watch them because the doe will be running around all about, and you mentioned the flagging aspect, and then a couple of minutes later you see a doe run across the field. A couple minutes later you see the buck right on her trail, right on her scent, pursuing the doe.
Yeah, we're the pursuers. Yeah, so that initiates. That's why we lead.
Makes sense. And then you also started to get into this concept of seeing women beyond their sexual value for young men who are looking to find a partner. And you said to kind of parse out, like, is there any virtue to this woman? And so, what are some of the virtues that you think men should be looking for within their spouse? And before you go into it, I think that this is beyond. So it's not about whether or not you're ready, because I think a lot of guys are kind of in their mind thinking about that. I'm a Gen Zer, and so I'm kind of also contemplating that. But I don't think it's a factor of being ready. I think it's a factor of finding a woman that is of great virtue, and I think that that's ultimately what we're craving. So, what do you think are some virtues that we should be looking for?
It's interesting that you say that. Yeah, being ready. I think a part of being ready is building our own virtue first, right? And that may take time. Because if you want a woman that has virtue, well, you got to demonstrate virtue. You have to have the virtue of discernment to even see a woman of virtue. If you're addicted to things and you're still struggling with a lot of shadows, you got your own problems, you're going to project that on her. You're going to attract that to you. You're going to dismiss it in her. So to the degree that you're walking around with your own unhealed wounds, you're going to attract a woman with unhealed wounds. You're going to attract a woman that you think can heal that wound for you. That's really what it ends up being. The female that we choose to be with is usually a byproduct of our weakest. You know how to say a woman makes you weak? She's just touching that weakness within you. A woman can't do anything to a man that a man's not already doing to or for himself. Even love, the love that you have for her is your love. So here's another sort of, a metaphor that's demonstrated in nature, but the man is the sun and the woman is the moon. Well, the moon is receptive. The moon only gets its light from the sun. And the moon is just going to reflect back what the sun is projecting. So if we really understand that and receive that and see that in ourselves, and see what we need to see in ourselves through our woman, she can be either your biggest downfall or your healing balm. We're designed to work together. There's no gray area. I don't think relationships are either just smooth sailing. Almost like how they put in a rock tumbler, they'll put two rocks. And when you put them in a tumbler, and they're just rough rocks. And when you take them out of the tumbler, they shine. You ever see these shiny rocks? These are rocks like, wow, how'd you make this shine? Well, you put it into a tumbler. I used to have a little tumbler when I was a kid, and we would sell like shiny rocks. It's like, oh, these are beautiful. Where do you get these shiny rocks? Well, they didn't go in shiny. They went in rough. You put them rough, and you tumble them, and they bang against each other, and they knock off all the roughness. That's what they do in there. They're banging against each other, and then next thing you know, you come and they're polished. So the relationship, you're either going to polish each other or you're going to destroy each other. So the first step in being ready, I would say, is not fixing all of your problems. I think that's where we sort of get paralysis by analysis or take too long. Like, oh no, I have things I need to fix about myself. No. You go into the tumbler to be fixed. You go into the tumbler and you'll work on each other. But being conscious, being aware, being objective, being honest about yourself is everything. Because if you're not honest about yourself, you're not conscious about yourself, you're going to blame her. I have a client right now I'm dealing with, and he's having all kinds of problems with his girlfriend. And I'm like, how are you showing up either to enable that or to provoke that? And it could be just as far, we can just go as far back as how did you attract each other into your lives? And for most relationships, it begins on bad terms. It usually begins out of trauma. It's usually, I met her at a bar. I met her out somewhere where we were looking for someone to sin with, right? We were on an app somewhere we're looking for degeneracy. It's literally what we're doing. We found each other, And we got what we asked for, which is a good time. And now I got to deal with this person. So when I say that we got to like work on ourselves first, I don't mean we got to fix ourselves. It means we've got to be honest with ourselves. We got to be truthful with ourselves, and we got to be able objective with ourselves. We got to be able to see clearly, as you know, Christ says, if the eye that's within you is darkness, then your whole body is darkness. We need to see with the eye that's within us. That eye needs to be light. He says, if that eye is light, then you'll be filled with light. That is a single eye. I really truly believe he's talking about inside our brain, the pineal gland. And so which is the seat of the spirit, which is the seat of intuition. It's like when you turn that on so you can see yourself. Now the whole you is light. Wow, I can see myself, and like there's some stuff there that I'd rather not see, but at least I can see it now. But if it's dark, it means you're completely ignorant, and you're walking around wondering why women are so bad to me. So that's the first step. And then when dealing with women, I think it's not so much any of the virtues, like the named virtues, courage and fortitude and prudence. These are all good things, but I think those are all fruits of another enlightened woman, a woman who is objective and honest. I would say objectivity and honesty are what you need to look for in her. Because one of the things that I learned this from the Red Pillars. They're like, women will never apologize. This is sort of like it's just built into their survival strategy, because they're much more threatened than us. They're much more vulnerable than us. So committing errors and then defending themselves, they call it solipsistic, is a woman's fallen nature. An unaware woman will always be the victim. That's why women can do no wrong in our society, because we've allowed solipsism in the female way to be the pinnacle. It's like, oh, it's fine. It's a woman. Believe all women. What was like the Me Too thing? It's like, me too. Yeah, me too. Me too. Just believe all women. Well, women lie too, right? Well, they do lie too, and they lie to themselves. I think one of the things that it would be. And I'm riffing right now. It's not like I've thought this through. So, pick me apart. But it's like a woman who is honest about her failings. A woman who's honest. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say something that might be a little crazy. And it's going to be tough. But I listened to this podcast once with this guy. And he was talking about this woman. And she had one boyfriend. Grew up with this boyfriend, high school, college. They were together for 12 years. And she had only been with one boy, one man. She had no sex with no other man. And they broke up. He left her. And so now, it's a tragedy, because when a man sleeps with a woman and doesn't commit to her when she's young, he basically robs her of her best years. Women expire faster than we do, right? By the time she's in her mid-20s, and by the time she gets to her late 20s, you're kind of like, you're on your way out now. The pretty 18-year-olds are coming out. So he takes her best years from her, and now she's trying to date again, right? She's trying to date again, and every guy that she goes on a date with, he wants sex, and she's like, no, I'm actually waiting for somebody that so I can marry, right? I was going to marry this guy, but he left me. And so now she's trying to be virtuous. And this is where men kind of screw things up. She's trying to be virtuous. And her friends say to her, you know what, girl? Go have your hot girl summer. They're like, stop trying to be so virtuous. Go out there and, sleep with as many men as you can over the next 3 months, right? Just break out of it. They're trying to give her advice. Just shake it off and get out there and give them what they want. And so she's like, she struggles a little bit. She's like, all right, fine, I'll do it. So she does it. And she finds that it's even worse, because she's like, I'm giving these guys sex now, and now they're ravenous. And he's like, they're gross, and but she did it. She slept around. She may have slept with 20, 30 guys, something crazy like that. And she felt even worse. But she didn't know what else to do because nothing was working for her because the men aren't virtuous. They didn't want anything to do with her unless she was putting out. Then she goes and puts out. But because she actually is an honest and objective woman, this is why it was so sad. She was an honest and objective woman after having the hot girl summer and realizing this is stupid. What did I just do? She went back to what she knew was right, which is I'm looking for a husband. But now, because she's honest and she's objective, the guys that she found that were husband material want nothing to do with her because she refused to lie about her hot girl summer. I felt bad for the girl because even though, she did that, she might make a really good wife because she's honest and she's objective. She's like, yeah, I screwed up. I didn't know what else to do. And I felt bad for her, where a lot of guys would be like, ew, gross. I saw something, and I think most guys in their hearts, they kind of can see it. Like, it might be something to struggle with, like, yeah, damn, you did that. But it's like, but you're honest, you're objective, and she wants what you want. She actually wants to be married. So I think we have to kind of like, we can't look at it so rigidly, like she needs to be a virgin. I mean, good luck. She needs to be a virgin. Okay, because even the word virgin was like virtue. Like when in the Bible it say like she was a virtuous woman, it literally means she was a virgin, right? I think the word virtue was a masculine word, and virgin, I don't know, I'm making this up, but just the way the word vir, it's sort of like they come from the same prefix, the same root. But like for a woman to be virtuous, she had to be a virgin. And what I'm saying is like, we live in such a fractured time. She's going to have her wounds. She's going to have her scars. She's going to have her problems. Remember, the women that you're trying to date are raised by boomers and Gen Xers that were at the peak of degeneracy in our society. They never seen a masculine man. They never seen a virtuous man. They never seen a good marriage. You have to forgive them for not being perfect. If you're being really picky because you want this, you're looking for a certain type of virtue in a woman, I think you're gonna miss. But I think if you are honest and objective about yourself, these guys, I want a virgin, but it's like, yeah, you're addicted to porn, right? Oh, I want a woman who wants to stay home and raise the kids. It's like, yeah, but you're broke and play video games. Like these guys, like and women and men both do it. Both men and women. You got these, 280-pound women talking about how I only date men who got 6 packs and 6 figures. It's like we're all delusional. We're all freaking delusional. Nobody's virtuous. But if you're honest and objective, real and raw, then I think there's room. There's hope.
Totally. I would push back a little bit on what you said. And I think I understand the way that you were saying it, so I'm just going to lay it out for you how I kind of interpreted it. Because at one point you had mentioned, okay, we have like keywords or buzzwords of virtue, like courage, honesty, accountability. And I think partly in our society we're kind of throwing around these words just like we're kind of throwing ourselves around in the dating market. Like we just throw around the word courage, like you'll see it in like a high school gymnasium. It has like courage and bravery and all these virtues written on there. But I think that the crux of it is that there's no meaning behind those words anymore. But if there was assigned meaning to those words and it became sort of a central part of the way that we live our life, I think that those words can be very important. And so kind of what you said there, and you even kind of said it while you were going through there, is like men should be looking for a woman who is honest, who takes ownership, who is accountable, who is chaste, maybe who is modest. And so there's all these different virtues that you kind of alluded to in there. But you also said, don't go looking out for a woman if you're a man, not applying yourself to those virtues as well. Because that's just totally hypocritical. Like you're not going to attract a virtuous woman if you're not trying your best to be a virtuous man. and we're all going to fall short of those virtues. But that's not the point of the virtues. The point of the virtues is so we have something to aim at. And when we have something to aim at, we know when we miss. That's what sin means. Sin means to miss the target. And so when we miss those virtues, whether we say like a small white lie or something like that, we miss the virtue of being honest. Now, another virtue that's going to come into play is, okay, are we going to take accountability for our action? Are we going to go confess our sin to the priest? Are we going to, take ownership of that? Or are we going to continue to steer down the path of missing the virtue? And, maybe hiding from the fact that we sinned and that we missed the target. And so there was a lot there. But I think that it's, like you said, important for men to be striving for virtue, especially if they're wanting a virtuous woman, because it's their duty as men to lead, especially their family, to become the men that they want for their family. Because you have virtues as a man that you're trying to ascribe to and that you're trying to hit. That's also going to apply to your family and how your children are going to see you. And your children are going to naturally learn through social osmosis of, how do I hit those virtues? How do I try to be like daddy? How do I try to be like mommy? So I think that was a great extrapolation of, what men should be doing before they're getting into a relationship, kind of what they should be doing themselves, and then what they should be looking for in a partner. Now, let's kind of transition into talking about creating a healthy relationship once you find that person. I mean, do you have any wisdom, from all of your years of being in a relationship with Colleen, about how you guys have created a strong relationship together?
Our relationship is purely a byproduct of the grace of God. I don't know how we got like this. I can, in retrospect, point things out, but I wasn't aware while we were becoming who we are. We were 14 years old when we met. And we were in high school and we were fornicating. I was a young dude just trying to get some. Her dad and her parents, they separated. Her mom was in a psych ward somewhere and she was looking for male attention. I was willing to give it to her as long as she was giving me what I wanted. I mean, not virtuous at all. But we didn't know what we were doing. No one, see, these kind of conversations that we're having right now, I never heard these weren't available in 1994. There's nobody talking like this at all. So, I mean, beyond ignorant. And my parents, they weren't talking to me like this. They didn't know. They didn't know any better. So, there's nothing I did to land, to choose her and make her my wife because I was so brilliant or so virtuous or so. I can just look back and I say by the grace of God and see where his hand was in it the entire time. I mean, I can name, and I give you this caveat just to say that I didn't do this. This is not because I am good. This is just, I can look back and point out certain things that, happened because of the grace of God that I can now say, well, that's why it works.
Well, that's a great
One
preface.
of which,
I appreciate. That's a great preface. I think. I appreciate your honesty in that. But even though you experienced that, where you found her when you were 14, and you weren't very educated on these types of things, like still over time, I think that you obviously have some insight as to how you have morphed and strengthened your relationship over time. So please continue. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, man, we're highly compatible from the beginning. We were just highly compatible from the beginning. I don't know. Again, I didn't choose that. But there are a few things about me and about her that make it work and have made it work and have been like leaven in this dough over these years that allow us to have 4 children. We've been together over 30 years, and our marriage just grows stronger and stronger, and our relationship is deeper and deeper, and our love blossoms more and more year after year. One thing for sure is that we put each other first before anything and everything. And I think that's ultimately what we want to do as men and women. We want to pour into one another. Like, that's when Jesus Christ says that. Like, it's so funny because we nod and we listen to the gospel and we hear Jesus and we're like, oh yeah, sure, okay, got it. And we make up our own stuff about what that might mean and we brush it off. But he's like, the mark of a true friend is one that will give up his life for the other. But how many Christians are couples and they won't even do that for one another? The marriage is all about like, well, he said, she said, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not getting what I want. Me. Where I live my life to literally give it to her. I don't do anything for me. If I lived for me, I wouldn't do half the things I do. Why? And this is just a natural masculine thing. We want to give ourselves to women. That's what, like, giving your essence. That's what you call a man's is ejaculate. You call it his essence. He wants to ejaculate his essence into a woman. He gives his life to her. In the French language, the word for orgasm is le petit mort, the little death. I've even read like some Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine books where they say that a part of the reason why men die before women is because with each ejaculation, we give a day of our life away. It's like, because there's so much potent life force and nutrition that leaves your body multiple times a week that you're just dying. Every time you ejaculate into a woman, you're giving her your life. A woman only ejaculates once a month. When I say ejaculate, I mean she purges. Her body lets go of all of the life force and the energy from the food that she eats that accumulates in her womb, and she lets it out once a month. Think about how, and you guys who are addicted to, pornography and masturbation, think about it, like, are you doing that every day? This is why, like, they laugh at like the old warnings, like, if you ejaculate, like, and they do like show pictures of a guy who like jerks off and he's like, laying on the bed and his eyes are sunken in, and it's like, this is what happens when you abuse yourself. They're not lying. And so as a man, it's our natural urge to give everything to our woman. And that it gives me purpose, it gives me joy, it gives me pleasure to just give her everything. I just want to give her everything. That's my masculine urge, and I think that's a natural masculine urge for a rightly ordered man. He wants to give her everything. But in return, she gives it back to me tenfold. You give a woman your semen, she gives you a baby. I give my woman my money, she gives me a home, warm place. She gives, not the house, I buy the house, but she makes it a home, fills it with love, fills it with food. She loves, my wife's not here this weekend, she's doing a Cursillo weekend. So she's away at this like Catholic retreat. And she did not leave until she cooked enough food to feed our entire family. She slaved the last 3 days just in the kitchen, cooking stuff, and putting it in, containers, putting in the refrigerator stacked. So she knows that when she's gone, that she already poured into us. So like the natural way for a man and a woman is for a man first to give her everything without reserve, and she gives it back to you multiplied. This is like the relationship between Christ and the church. This is why it's like the mystical marriage between the Christ and the church. You give Christ everything. Just give it to him and he'll multiply it and return it. He'll return it back to you in multiplies. I mean, he says it over and over again. You give him what you have, he'll multiply it and give it back to you tenfold. And that's the relationship between a man and a woman in order to make it work. But you both have to be on that page. Otherwise, there's going to be resentment. If one is giving and the other one's not, there's going to be it's going to be unequal. That's the unequally yoked. That's an unequal yoking. I'm pouring into you, but you're just taking. And a lot of times, it happens both ways. For a man, sex, this is why it's strange that we use this language. But I understand why we do it, because we live in a fallen world and we approach things from a fallen place. But men think women give us sex. Did you get some? They would say. Did you get some? Not realizing that, no, you didn't get anything. You gave to her. But you've got a perverted view of things. So even in your pouring out, you're selfish. You're giving her, but it's such a perverted form of giving that you now become the receiver. And that's actually very feminine. To be seeking women for sex is actually a form of effeminacy. Because now I'm seeking them to take, and women are the ones that receive. Just all you gotta do is look at the sexual act. One gives, one receives. So if you're out there trying to get sex, you're acting like a woman. You're actually being very effeminate. But then for the woman, we live in such a perverted world where she will take, and you see this happen all the time with a lot of beta males. She will take all your money. She'll take all your stuff. She'll take your dates. She'll take your gifts. She'll receive. But she'll be very stingy with the sex. But she'll go give it or have it with the bad guy, the guy who's not giving her anything. So it's this perverted form of giving and receiving, taking and projecting that has led us to have bad marriages. And it begins, part of the reason why fornication is such a bad idea is because most people, if you're having premarital sex, you're already starting that perverted way of giving and taking. And ultimately, sex dries up. If we're living our lives for sex, and if we're in a relationship because of sex, we're building our house on shaky ground. Because ultimately,
let's talk about that. Because there's this phase in a relationship, especially with like an unvirtuous relationship, where you're fornicating and you're doing that at the beginning of the relationship, and it creates this like sex goggles. Like you start to perceive your partner in a way that is perverted because you start to see her for her sexual value, and this leads you to disregard maybe some of her weaknesses and potentially even your own weaknesses. I mean, it's likely what drew you to that connection in the first place. But so I guess the best argument for avoiding that is God's plan for a marriage, which is waiting until you get married to fornicate.
Wait to have sex. And a lot of guys, it's tough. But men, we have to lead. We got to lead. I speak with a lot of young men who want to remain virtuous. But the women are like, oh, he won't have sex with me. So they start to stray, and then they ghost. And you got to kind of let that be, because if a woman hangs you and her into a relationship on sex, that means she's actually trying to be the masculine partner in the relationship. Because she knows that women realize they're like the drug dealer and we're like the drug addict. The drug dealer needs the drug addict to get hooked on the drug so that he can control him. And so if she can't get you hooked on her sex, she can't control you. And at a very primal level, that scares her. She's afraid of you. If you don't give a woman sex, I don't mean don't let her know that you're a sexual being, but don't give her your sex. She fears you. because she knows that she can't control you. And she can't control you with what is cheap. Every woman has a vagina. Vaginas are cheap. You didn't do anything for that. You're given that. But they will still use it as a means to ensnare you. If you don't take that bait and she leaves you, she goes to you, let her go, because it would have been a bad relationship anyway, because she wants to infiltrate and usurp your power. That's what she's trying to do.
Yeah, so, I mean, you said she fears you. I will add on to that. I think that there's much to say about a virtuous woman, and she will respect you.
Mm-hmm.
And you were also
A virtuous
saying,
woman.
to kind of deepen the argument for waiting till marriage, waiting is virtuous in and of itself. You are literally forging the relationship through fire and through challenge. And through that process, you can see, how well do I work with this person throughout this process of great challenge, of great restriction, and how do we make it through? Do we make it through together well? And do we perform well together? If not, then, maybe it's not meant to be. But if you do, and that's the starting point of your relationship, it's like you've been battle tested, and now you are prepared to to perform in the sacrament of marriage. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and I was thinking something while you're talking, agreeing with you. You get to see the person for who they are. You get to see them without the sex goggles on. And there was one other thing I was thinking when I got so engaged with what you were saying. But anyway, yeah, there's ample evidence that this is the case. And there's ample evidence that the sexual revolution has been the downfall of the family. Like, if you want to know what doesn't work, look at what people have been doing. And since the 1960s, divorce rates have skyrocketed, but so has promiscuity. It's like they literally skyrocketed. It's like introduction of the pill, divorce, and they started going up together. So it's like you don't need to be trying to be a saint to figure it out. It's very logical. A scientist will look at this with a very cold eye and realize, okay, well, there's something to this. So, good thing to consider anyway.
So then what is your view on, because we talked a lot about, okay, if you do it that way, and if you wait till marriage, like, what's the best way to go about handling conflict or disagreement or challenges within a relationship that you've learned over the years?
Well, if we're talking about during the courtship phase, like before marriage, right? Because there are two different stages. But one thing you'll discover and you'll see is that when the emotions when the heat of passion that it erupts during sexual encounter is not coloring the disagreement, it's so much easier to get over. Because now the disagreement is on level playing fields. It's elevated. It's a conscious disagreement. It's not an emotional disagreement. Because you haven't become sinfully emotionally bonded in such a way that this agreement is now personal. When you're in marriage and you have become one flesh, then it's different, because now it is personal, because I've given myself to this person. And so their disagreement is now it is personal because they disagree with me, and we've chosen to make this work. But if you're not bonded physically or sacramentally, well, then it's just a disagreement with someone who I'm considering going further with. So it's a lot easier. I watch these guys, it's like they get into these hot sexual relationships with these women, and then they're fighting all the time. And I'm like, you're fighting because of the sex. That's why you're fighting. The same addiction to her sex is the same addiction to you guys fighting with one another. It's the heat of that passion that's just being inflamed, that's causing you to like even pick fights with one another, because there may be like jealousy, right? And there's all kinds of stuff. But when you're in union, when you're married now and you are one flesh, the church has some very good metaphors and very good teachings for what that should look like. And we see this hierarchy, this structure everywhere in society. If a army is going to succeed, there has to be hierarchy. And if a government is going to succeed, there is a hierarchy. There's always a president. If a corporation is going to succeed, there's a sort of hierarchy. The hierarchy is not about ruler and ruled. It's about, they say heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's about sacrificial leadership. And so the man is called to that. He's called, Paul says he's the head. The woman, the head, man is the head, but the woman is the body. I like to say my wife is a part of my body. I call her. Well, what does the head do for the body? Well, the head wants to make sure that the body is well taken care of. Do you want a head? We live in such a schizophrenic, schizoid, disjointed world that many people live in the realm of their heads, and their bodies are sick, their bodies are fat, their bodies are just destroyed. We're living in this imaginary world. And that's what a marriage that is disordered looks like. But a truly strong head makes sacrificial decisions in order that it can serve the body well. Why? So that the body can continue serving the head. But the head, it starts, and I don't, it's chicken or an egg, I don't know. But the natural order, meaning in the third world, the fallen world, it begins with the head. That's why Adam comes first. It begins with the head. We have to choose. We get to choose. We're conscious creators. We choose. And so the man, it needs to be understood between both the man and the woman that this order exists within the family. But both have to be, like I said before, I want to give everything to my wife. Well, my head wants to give everything to my body. My head wants to do what, so for example, like cutting out certain vices. Like that's a conscious decision not to do drugs. Like drugs are nice. Like, yeah, it's fucking great to get drunk. Like that feels amazing. It feels amazing to get high. It feels amazing to jerk off. Like, I say it's usually these three things: weed, wine, and women. It is just a nice thing. But the head rationalizes and is like, wait a second, okay, I know it feels good. And you gotta understand, women operate from their feeling side, and it's not to be ignored, but it needs to be discerned. A woman, I just read an article talking about how like the downfall of every civilization is preceded by the rulership of women. The more you start seeing women in positions of power, the more you get ready, the society is about to implode. Because women they're not built to lead from a rational place. A man is very objective. Men will make decisions that hurt their feelings in order to support the truth. So making a decision to cut out, it's hard to cut out these things that feel good in order to, hey, it's better for the heart that you don't eat these foods. It's better for the digestive system that you don't eat these foods. It's better for the brain and our whole gig here if we don't drink alcohol. It's better if but the body is like, yeah, but that feels so good. It's better that we don't, right? And so are you going to listen to the body or are you going to listen to the head? The head, it all ends with the head. The head has to be the final word is no. Conscious decision, it's no. There are times when we're dealing with our children and my wife she leans on me because she's like, they're out of control right now. They're not listening to me and I can't do anything. And it's because the tenderness and the softness in her heart and the desire just for their pleasure is too overwhelming for her to say no. So she's like, Elliot, I need you right now. Why? Because I am the final word. And so I won't allow my heart to get in the way when I tell the child, look, I want you to have a good time, but the answer is absolutely no. Why? Because I said so, and I got the final word. Why? Because it's rational. It might not feel good. It might not make sense to you in the moment, but it's the rational decision. I'm not perfect, but I'm being more objective. The masculine is more objective. The woman is more subjective. We need subjectivity. And that's why what does the head do? It consults with the subjectivity of the body. The head has to consult with the body in order to know what is best for the body. So the head will take into consideration, man, like my heart hurts right now. My stomach is tense right now. My body's not doing well right now. Let me step down for a minute, condescend, they say in the Bible. He condescended. When Jesus Christ, God, condescends and becomes one of us, he's literally being like the Father and kneeling down to the children or to his wife, his spouse. They say that we're his spouse. And saying, okay, I get it. You're in pain. You're not feeling good. Let me give of myself. Let me step down. And even though I don't want to do this, it's what's best for you. I'm going to give my life for you. This is a very masculine way. Masculine heroism is sacrificial heroism. That's why men are firefighters and men are police officers or men go into the military. Not just because we're bigger and stronger, but also because we can do that. A man can give his life up much easier than a woman because he will do what's right for the greater than what's right for me here now. When they say that women are solipsistic, it's okay that they're solipsistic. They need to preserve themselves and the womb. The woman is the womb. Men do everything to protect women, and women do everything to protect themselves. And it's okay that way because they are the jewel on the inside. That's where life comes from. So it's okay that in a way, I'm not excusing them, it's more of their fallen nature, but it's understandable for them to lie a little bit more, protect themselves a little bit more, be a little bit more selfish. It's because they're vulnerable. But it's totally effeminate for a man to act that way. It's for a man to live on the periphery and to protect that which is value, which is in the feminine. Anyway, I'm going all over the place with this. But in terms of the relationship in the marriage, there has to be that understanding that the man is the head and the woman is the heart. One is not better than the other, but one is the discerner, one is the decider, one is the one that makes the final word. And it has to be. Otherwise, you're going to be at each other forever. Someone has to have the final word. And for that to work, they both need to be understanding and working on the true virtue, the virtue of true femininity and the true masculinity in their highest calling.
Very well said. While you were talking about that, and I want to offer up this analogy, and then you can let me know what you think about it, and then we can move on to talking about raising children more primarily. But in the Bible, Jesus says that you should build your house upon the rock. Do not build your house upon the sand, build your house upon the rock. And so in the argument between should we wait for marriage, should we not wait for marriage, waiting for marriage then becomes something like building your house upon the rock. And the analogy is like, okay, if you're building a fire, what do you do when you're building a fire? Well, you get some kindling and you get some like fire starter. And when you don't wait for marriage, it's like you're just lighting up that kindling and that fire starter, and you get that massive fire right away. And then you also kind of pointed to this, like when you do start fornicating and you start getting at each other's throats and arguing, what I was picturing was like a flickering of the fire. Like it's about to go out. because it was built upon the fire starter and the kindling, and you forgot to stoke the fire, to slowly build and nurture the fire. So if you're going to build a fire that's going to last a long time, what you're going to do is you're going to, set it up properly with large pieces of wood, small pieces of wood, and then the kindling and the really small stuff. And you're going to use that as a fire starter, and then you're going to get it going with that kindling, and then you're going to slowly kind of let the fire build, let it start to attach itself to the larger pieces of wood where it's going to burn for a long time. And so I think waiting for marriage is really like that way of building the fire, and not waiting for marriage is like just starting the fire with kindling, and man, that fire is going to go out really fast, and it's going to be an ugly end to the fire. But then you also kind of went into it perfectly, where you talked about a situation where you have a disagreement maybe between the children, or you're the kind of the final say with a decision about the children, because naturally your wife wants to please and wants them to feel good, but as the head and as the man of the house, you're a little bit more objective, and you can kind of see past that, and you can make more of a rational decision. So how do you really let that play out in the marriage? Because I think that that's so true, where women are more, and they both serve their purpose. I'm not degrading women's purpose in creating a stability and creating happy type of emotion, but men have more of a tendency to want to push their children, to challenge their children. And so how do you kind of see that playing out in your relationship?
Well, the love of a father is aspirational, right? Where the love of a mother is more sensual. And just think about it. What does the mind do? The mind projects. The head projects. It's aspirational. It's like aspiring. Where the body is more sensual. And so you need both. You need your mom to love you unconditionally. Here's another way to say it. A mother's love is unconditional, and this is going to sound harsh, but a father's love is conditional, meaning like you could be a total screw up, drug addict, and lazy, playing video games, and your mom's still going to make you a sandwich. Your mom's still going to love you. She's going to wish better for you, but she's never really going to compel you for more, unless she's very masculine, and many single moms, that's the case. But for the most part, she's just you're her baby. You'll always be her baby. Not in a way you could do no wrong. Mommy, it's mommy's love. It's mommy's love. And mommy's love can destroy you, just like too much candy. It's sweet, but it'll rot your teeth. So your mom will rotten you. She'll spoil you. She'll spoil you rotten. Where a father's love is more conditional. And this, we live in a world that venerates women's values more than men's. They want men to love their children like women. But it's not appropriate, it's not right, and it's not natural for a man to love his children the same way as the woman. His children the same way as the woman. The man's love for his child is more utilitarian. I hate to kind of say that, but it's like, okay, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? What is your value? Right? So the father's love is more like, look, I'm not loving you properly if I let you be a slapdick. Like, I gotta compel you to do so. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you doing with yourself? And same, it's that way with the sons, and it's the same way with the daughters. It's like, look, I gotta tell you, it's not right the way that you're doing the things that you're doing. I have to call it out. The father has to call it out because ultimately it reflects on him. It's like, that's why they would say, they don't say this anymore because we live in a perverted society, but there was always this sense, even 50 years ago, that when like a kid was out there running the streets doing shit, being bad, or a girl was very promiscuous, one of the first things they'd want to know was like, who's your father? Why? I mean, you may have seen this in like, old story books you'd read or old movies. Like it seems like an old tradition. But the first thing they want to know is, who's your father? Where's your father? They don't ask that anymore. And I think it's even indicative of this, the fact that we carry our father's name. Your last name is your father's last name and your grandfather's name. Why is that? Because that's John's son. And so he represents John. It's like, what the fuck is John doing? Look at this kid. John's not there. John's not talking to him. And so the children are more compelled to be something and to do the right thing and to be virtuous by the father's love. It's a harsher love. It's not an emotional love. A mother's love is an emotional love. A father's love is a logical love, because it's not loving for the father to see his child fail and to be a loser. The way a father, it's just masculine love in general is logical love. It's a rational love. Masculine love is rational love. It's utilitarian, because the way women create is on the inside. The way men create is outside. That's why men build cathedrals and skyscrapers and architecture. All of our creation is out there. We love the world through boundaries. Think about like someone who's an architect. He's literally drawing boundaries. He creates by drawing boundaries. So his love is not boundless love like the mother's love. It's a boundary-driven love so that he can help form this child. That's the true love of a father.
So, and I think that's accurate. What I would ask to kind of deepen and go further into that conversation is like, okay, as a father, because I think as men and as fathers, we desire to have that intimate relationship with children. And so how do you kind of balance that, like wanting to push them and challenge them and create boundaries with developing that sense of intimacy with them and really knowing them?
They've done this study about children that are raised with the way. Here's how it goes. Oxytocin is released when a mother hugs or a mother speaks with the mother. So they say that the oxytocin is the bonding hormone, right? The bonding hormone is released in the child when they're held, but spoken to by the mother. The mother's voice releases oxytocin. The father's play produces oxytocin. The father's voice doesn't produce oxytocin. It may even create cortisol. It's like dad's voice. I remember my dad's voice created stress. But by rough and tumble play, when the dad throws you up in the air and then catches you, or when like my kids in the pool, I'd wrestle with them in the pool and scare them like I was an alligator. Like they used to climb on my head and they would do flips off of me. That kind of stuff, that's what builds that form of intimacy. It's in doing things with the dad. Even as my children get a little bit older, and now like it's tougher because I have daughters. Even my son, I'm not physically intimate with them like I was when they were younger, but that's where the bond happens, when you're physically intimate with them by playing with them. Rough house play in particular, scary stuff with daddy, because dad's putting you in this compromised position, but then saves you, and it builds this bond with dad. But when they get older and they're going out into the world, it's the dad that is the conduit between the warmth and love in the home and making it in the world. In the natural order of things. Of course, I'm not talking about our world as it is now, but if we were to do things in its rightly ordered way. And so I watch my kids now where when they want intimacy from me, it's usually advice about what they're doing in the world. They don't really want to come to their mom for that stuff. They'll go to their mom for other things. But, Dad, how do I deal with this situation out there? And that's where the father's role evolves from, the physical intimacy of rough and tumble play, which is important for that physical bonding. But then it becomes this rational bonding where hopefully your dad becomes your guide, becomes your wise elder, becomes the man that you come to speak to and get advice for how to make things work in the world.
Yeah. And to even push further into, because you talked about the transitional period between rough housing and play when they're little to now kind of serving as a guidance and a mentor when they're older, and you're saying, okay, they come back to me with this problem that they're experiencing out in the world. And I thought it was really interesting that you brought up oxytocin, because I think that oxytocin is one of the most important. It's like a sticky glue that really bonds people together. And it's literally like a physical representation of that bond. But when you do send them out into the world, it's like, okay, well, how do we get that oxytocin back? How do we still continue to facilitate that oxytocin release? And it's like, okay, you send them out into the world, you give them the guidance and the counsel, and they go out there and crush it. And then they come back to you, and you're like, job well done. Like, you did great. And that kind of still allows that oxytocin to be released, I think.
Yeah, Father's approval. That, it's lost a lot of its value today. But, I mean, think about in the Bible, like, Cain and Abel, it was Cain and Abel, it began with Cain and Abel. It was like the father approved of Abel, he didn't approve of Cain. And it tore Cain up that he didn't get the father's approval. And then you look at Jacob and Esau. And, Esau got the blessing, right? But Jacob wanted it, and so he stole it. He usurped his father's approval. And it's this desire for the father's blessing that is so deeply enrooted in it. This is why now in our world where the family has been destroyed, that's why we idolize, and I think this is sort of coming to an end, but idolize stars, right? I even saw it like projected upon me when 10 years ago when I was on YouTube and I was one of the first speaking to a lot of young men, they would project the father upon me because there was this sense that I could get approval from the masculine somewhere else. Because I usually, maybe they're not getting it, or the world has taught them, don't seek it from your father. Your father's just dumb. Fathers don't know anything. Fathers are abusive, or like we're taught not. So, but we can't help it. We'll project it on, like, say, a Donald Trump, right? And they'll be like, oh man, and like these guys who go out of their way to like, I got a picture with Donald Trump. And it's like, well, what do you like? I just want to talk to my dad. Donald Trump's cool and all, but like I don't need his approval. But it's this deep desire, this need. In Iron John by Robert Bly, he talks about making room for the king. He's like, and so there's this room, there's this space within us that is only filled by the approval of the Father. And so one of the, again, I don't know how much value it holds. I hope it does for my children, and I hope I use it properly. But one of the things, because I can't control them. They know what I approve of, and they know what I don't approve of. And if they're going out there and they're acting in ways that they know I don't approve of, and I know, all I say to them, there's a certain point where like I can't ground you anymore, can't force you to do anything anymore, right? You're a certain age, you're gonna take off. I'm not gonna fight with you, but I will tell you this: remember, your father does not approve. That's all I want you to know. Oh, and then my daughters, they're funny. They'll like argue and they'll try to get me to approve. I'm like, do whatever you want. You're going to do what you want to do. I can't stop you. But just remember, your father does not approve. I think when we take that, I don't want to say weaponize it, because that's not the right word, but really use it, honor it, like understand the value of your approval. That's a very important, and I think a righteous form of handling your children when you can't, the word compelling your children when you can't force them. It's like, well, you've lost your father's approval. What is that worth to you? Oh, I still love you. Yeah, I'm not gonna disown you, but I don't approve of anything you're doing right now. If that holds any value, it we should aspire to that holding value, and for them to value it.
Yeah, I think ultimately if they do value it, that means that you have earned their respect. And you have likely earned their respect by setting a good example and being a good role model.
Yeah, hopefully, who knows? I'm trying my best. We're all trying our best.
I think that's a really powerful spot to end at. Elliot, this conversation's been awesome. I've really enjoyed it. Just everything. I think we're in agreement on a lot of things, and just kind of charting out this territory is really interesting. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on today, man. And
yeah, my pleasure, man. I enjoy speaking with you.
Cool. Well, with that being said, we'll end off the episode. If you want to stay on, we can chat after.